this is the future where we're looking to basically hack the spinal cord. And, given my whole life of research and understanding what people, how valuable data is to understanding and improving our existence, it just seemed like a no-brainer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Wellness at the Speed of Light. I've been looking forward to this one for quite some time. This is Dr. Galen Buckwalter, who has an unbelievably fascinating story. Not only is he a distinguished research psychologist, it's just going to be fascinating for you guys, but he is personally at the forefront of brain-machine interfaces, and we're going to talk all about that and how it's helped him to recover from his own personal injury and how the future holds such promise, such change, and it's all moving so fast. We were just talking about that before we started the episode, that the next 10 years will undoubtedly be the fastest rate of change in human history as far as technology and what we're doing in medicine and what we're doing in generally in the world with AI and machines and this and that. So on that note, I want to welcome Dr. Buckwalter to the show. It is an absolute honor to have you on the show, and we're going to dive right in here.
Thanks, Stefano. I'm really excited as well.
All right, fantastic. And so, we could go into your long background as a psychologist and the things you have, but I think that, you had a defining moment in your life where you had a serious spinal cord injury, probably changed the entire course of your life and what you've been able to accomplish, and now what you're bringing to the world and helping others to heal from their injuries. Can you talk about, what life was like before that injury, and then what happened and kind of how much it kind of turned your world, upside down? Because I think it lays the foundation for who you are and everything that you've accomplished.
Absolutely agree. Well, yeah, I was born a child of a Mennonite preacher in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. So that's about as far from Los Angeles as
pretty much
as one can get. So yeah, there's a story there. But growing up on a farm, almost idyllic in a lot of ways, having all that land, having physical exercise, just being part of life. I was a runner, a fairly gifted runner, was starting to think about what I would do with that, explore that. And then the year between my junior and senior year of high school, went with some friends to a river, hot summer day, decided to cool off. A couple of my friends dove off these rocks and I dove off, somehow managed to find a submerged rock that I struck the top of my head. And, immediately it was a change of life. My description of that injury was it felt like somebody stabbed me in my neck and cut my body off.
Oof.
I just literally felt like a bobbing head under these river currents, which, is not life-sustaining. So, I kind of went through the mental preparations of dying very quickly, had the most sublime feeling I've ever had in my life. So much so that when I realized my friends were pulling me out, it was like, no, get off me, But that feeling passed, immediately. My will to live came back, but there I was with a body that no longer worked. I, went to the emergency room. They got me into an ambulance, and the neurosurgeon that I saw, that when I was still in the ER, I asked him if I would ever walk again, and he said no. I mean, that bluntness was really difficult in the moment, but I think in retrospect, it was also essential in my moving forward. Although, moving forward with a spinal cord injury is
Yes.
such a profound adjustment. It took me a long time. I think I was somewhat depressed for probably 10 years, and just going through a lot of just pushing, stupid boundaries and, a lot of drug use. But, in retrospect, it was all just masking a lot of things that I was having to adjust to. But, eventually I feel like I've found my soil, and that soil is my mind,
Yes.
and living a life of the mind as an academic for a long period of time. More recently, working primarily, in industry as a consultant. And my graduate degree, my PhD, is in clinical psychology, but I veered into research psychology and just find it fascinating. And, at this point, I work with companies and individuals who are interested in using information about human traits kind of at scale for the betterment of interactions with people. So, I think if our devices are more attuned to who we are,
Yes.
they'll be more useful to us. Of course, now with AI, that conversation is changing quite a bit, and is there a point where the digital becomes, just part of an echo chamber and all of that and becomes not helpful? Those are very real conversations for me to engage in. But yeah, that's kind of the thumbnail sketch.
No, but I think thank you for sharing. I know those are difficult. I've had a couple other, folks. I mean, obviously in real life, obviously I've seen so many people that have a spinal cord injury. That's in my real life. But in my life as a media guy and podcasting, I've had a couple other, spinal cord, injured patients. And honestly, I'm always inspired by these stories of like resilience where you're right. Like your first instinct, because when we think about it, right, when any like you just take just a normal person off the street that has never thought about this stuff, and you say, hey, if I hit a rock and I couldn't move anything, I think their reaction, just their reaction without it actually happening, would be just like yours. Just leave me under the water and let me go.
Right.
But
Yep.
this stories of like resilient, like I had one amazing young woman, her name was Christina, and she fell off of a 3-story parking ramp directly onto her head, shattered her cervical spine, and ended up getting some treatments, got a little bit of function back, but she was in such a dark place and had to be pulled out of there, just to move to that next level. But she had good support around her and stuff like that. And then I had another guy who was an avid cyclist. I mean, like really avid cyclist, like top notch, would do the most difficult, kind of hills and things like that, and was doing some black diamond, like, course, and flipped over and had, severe paralysis. Now he speaks. He's a speaker and counsels. They both do. They both counsel other spinal cord injured patients and just say, you know what, life is not over, because most of our life, is, like you said, it's in here.
Absolutely.
And that's where, we get to the next thing, because I do want to get into the whole like psychology, like eHarmony, and like how you worked on that stuff or whatever. But before that, I think, like talking about just kind of being in the brain, I think that a lot of the audience is really going to want to know. Now you've got this device on your head, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, it's just fascinating. And literally you're plugging in to something else. And it's a brain machine interface of most people that are going to be watching this podcast. They've only either heard something on social media about Neuralink, or they've seen things in science fiction movies. That's pretty much the extent of it. Most physicians know nothing about brain machine, interfaces.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first question is, how did this even come about where you became somebody that, went down that path? And then I want to just dive into how it works. And then really, like, what do you experience when this is happening? It's fascinating because brain machine interfaces are going to be like as common as,
oh yeah,
it's coming. I mean, where it's just going to be like, and not just for something like you experience, for
right.
so many conditions, including psychiatric disorders and stuff like that, and other things where the body fails, but the brain is okay. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's stuff of science fiction, but science fiction's becoming reality really, really rapidly. So can you tell, how did you get identified as somebody, or is this something you sought out yourself?
Yeah, it's again a story, but
this is why we're here. This is why we're here.
All right.
Yeah.
I at this point, I'm 69 now. So a couple of years ago, and I mean, surviving with high-level spinal cord injury for 50 years is not the norm. I think it's becoming more common that, there are longer-term survivors of spinal cord injury, but I'm kind of on the cutting edge of that. As part of that, I'm experiencing a lot of, kind of anomalies in my physical life, shall we put it nicely. But yeah, like at this point, I have like advanced, kind of deterioration of my hips and my spinal cord. And that ends up kind of putting me almost in a chronic state of autonomic dysreflexia.
Yes.
Which is a syndrome that, a good doctor knows about, but probably not
the audience. You want to just like, what it like I mean, the high blood pressure is one, that you get all these different, crazy fluctuations, but can you talk about it a little bit for the
it basically, I have no normal sensation from, my chest down, but my body, when it experiences pain, there's basically a loop, in my brain, not activating my brain, but it sets up a loop in my spinal cord, in my autonomic system, that produces all these autonomic responses. So now I have chronic pain that is setting off this, like whenever I'm seated, I start sweating. I start, my blood pressure is just a maniac.
It's crazy. Yep.
I have to, take it like 4 or 5 times a day, adjust my meds for any given day. And so a lot of this really came to a head, a couple of years ago, where, that this was starting to be a chronic issue for me. And it was like, really, honestly, I've always lived believing that I have the right to call it if I think my physical, realities aren't congruent with the ability to live a satisfying life.
Yeah.
So I was at that point. It's like, I mean, I don't want to get a hemorrhagic stroke someday because my blood pressure is at 250 or something. So, I was thinking about that, but I told a friend about it, and she said, hey, check out, she's a graduate of Caltech, and she had heard about this program for brain implants. Her thinking was maybe there was some potential treatment in, getting this brain machine implant, which, I when I heard about it, it's like, let's check it out. But immediately, the PI of the project, the principal investigator, said, no, there's no functional benefit for you, but this is the future where we're looking to basically hack the spinal cord. And, given my whole life of research and understanding what people, how valuable data is to understanding and improving our existence, it just seemed like a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, I don't need to cash out now. Let's at least play this out and see if I can actually do something positive, really positive with whatever time I have. And so I went ahead with, it was a 6-hour neurosurgical procedure where they did a full craniotomy. And I'll explain the technical details of it in a bit, but just to complete this loop, I mean, the sense of purpose and meaning that this has given to me, I mean, my physical status really hasn't improved. I still have to deal with sweating all the time and monitoring my blood pressure like a hawk. But I mean, yeah, purpose and meaning, it ain't no joke, man. It's really the core of resilience, I think, and of being human. And this has really kind of ignited that within me, to know that I have the potential ability to help young, dumb kids like me in the future, but also just the basic research that's being done on, how our brain works and how we can optimize our brain. That's been such an empowering experience for me. So, it hasn't improved me functionally, but man, has it improved my resilience and my, desire to get out of bed every morning, despite whatever else.
Is it more because of the meaning, because you're helping humanity and helping these researchers to think about how it's going to help other people? Or I know you haven't had any physical, kind of noticeable change. How about your pain level? Has it helped your pain at
No.
all? It hasn't helped your pain. So you're still dealing with that. And that is so powerful, because it's like when we have meaning, a lot of patients that have chronic pain, let's just say, like a lot,
Yeah.
I see so many people that have chronic pain and they've had it for 30 years. And eventually they get to a point where they don't have meaning. But then when they have meaning, like they have like a grandkid or something that they want to see graduate from, whatever, or whatever it might be, it makes such an impact. It's so powerful the way our mind can just shape, like the way we think shapes our entire reality. It's just so amazing. And that's why, like, we even know, as a surgeon, when patients go into surgeries really positive and feeling like it's going to, it changes everything. When they go in negative, this is never going to work, this is not going to help my pain. Guess what? It probably is not going to help, unless they have such a severe structural problem. Obviously, it's going to help. But when it comes to doing something for pain, our mindsets are it's really everything. And that's what I hear from just so many people, is that this desire to do something, or to have something to do, or to contribute to the world. It just, like I said, now you're excited to get up in the morning still, even though you're going to deal with all those, those different, the issues you have. I think that's amazing. I think that's a universal quality. And I think if any of us, whether we're able-bodied or not, if we lose purpose, we've got nothing. I mean, Viktor Frankl's book, right? Like, being I mean, that is one of the most, I mean, everybody should, know Viktor Frankl, but finding meaning when you're being beaten every single day and you're being starved and in, human sub-animal conditions, one can even say that they were, subjected to, but yet found purpose and found meaning in those things. So thanks for sharing that. So when you, going back to kind of my 10-part question before, but when you so you've got this in your head, the brain interface, without getting into all the anatomy of where it's located, what nuclei it's all that stuff. because that's way beyond, kind of the scope of most people that are watching this. But when you plug in, is it like going into another world? Like in Avatar, because it's going to be like that. That's where we're going. What
Yeah.
is it like when you plug into the machine? Are you like, do you see different stuff, or you do it, or are you doing it and then like looking at a computer screen and doing something like I'm not? Yeah. Can you just tell us a little bit about like what does it feel like?
Yeah. Well, the implants that I have are both read, meaning, they record the activity
Yep.
of individual neurons firing, but they're also write, which
Yep.
means they can stimulate the regions of my brain that they're implanted in. So, I mean, the experience of being hooked up in and of itself is no different. But what happens when, like, I can you like they decode my neuronal signals so precisely that they hook those signals up to like a virtual arm and hand,
Yes.
and I can move the fingers on a virtual hand individually, and as a unit to grasp things, which is pretty next level for
Yes.
me because I haven't done that in 50 years, but yet my brain has retained those neurons that are capable of
Right.
doing that.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's pretty trippy, but the experience of being stimulated is really kind of, what you're alluding to, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it. Like yeah.
Then the brain is being altered by kind of external, forces, or that the brain is not used to. I mean, like the brain, yeah, those neurons fire, but they're not activated by something from the
Right.
outside.
Right.
So, like, I get sensation, or at least the perception of
Yes.
sensation in parts of my hand that are completely numb, from the stimulation into my sensory cortex. It also, the arrays that I have are in areas of my brain other than just sensory and motor, although that's where 3 of the 6 are. But when they activate other regions of my brain, it's like my brain knows something's different. They give me this task where, a light will go on for a second, it'll go off, and then it'll come back on. And they will have stimulated during one of those times. I have to tell them which time I think it was stimulated, or I was stimulated. Initially, when they started stimulating my parietal region, I would get, 10 out of 10 right, not chance, no, but I couldn't identify what I was experiencing. It's just like, my brain was trying to figure it out. It's since put some percepts to it. So, I now also feel sensations in my arms from that stimulation, but it took my brain a while to put that together, which is just amazing that the brain can do that. And so these experiences, I mean, how much can they be shaped? Is it possible that we stimulate our brains in ways that we can actually mold what we're experiencing as a result of it? Those kind of things I don't think are really on the radar of people when they think about what these brain machine interfaces can do. It they Potentially they can help us mold our brain in ways that we haven't even thought about. Maybe it's possible to heighten our senses. Maybe it's possible to develop new senses. Our brain is incredible. And that's kind of what I find myself at the forefront of. I feel like I have this incredible opportunity at this point to not only help out science, but also to experience these states myself. And we want to start exploring systematically things like meditation,
Yes.
and mindfulness, and can those types of experiences be amplified by stimulation? There's just so much it's like, how do we figure out what all we want to do? I mean, Caltech has a very clear course, and that's first and foremost. But these other exploratory things, it's just like, whoa, this is brave new world.
No, I think it's what it brings, visions of, you talked about like forming new senses or new experiences that humans maybe have never even experienced before. And I think, some people are afraid of that stuff. I think it's good. I think it's almost like, they're like, we're searching for new superpowers. It's always in those movies, right? People take some weird experimental drug and then they get some other sense and they can just kind of sense one around them. And who knows, where it's going. Do you combine, like when you plug in, do you also wear like a virtual reality?
I do.
Is that where you're seeing kind of your hands?
Yeah.
In the VR.
In the VR or just on a flat screen. I have that as well. But yeah, we work in VR a fair amount of the time.
Okay. Because I guess that the theory, for those of you, kind of watching this or listening to it, the theory is that, there's two things that happen with any injury, and nerve injuries or spinal cord injuries or anything. There's the actual injury where the structure is damaged itself, and sometimes it's too damaged for those signals to go through it. But then there's also rewiring the pathways, because it is such a complex thing, right? We have billions and billions of neurons, and then those extend, and then in the spinal cord is one of the most complex structures. It's a fascinating. I mean, obviously, as a spine surgeon, I'm fascinated by the spinal cord, but rewiring all those connections, it's not as simple as, hey, just putting it all back together. It has to rewire correctly. So the theory is that if you can stimulate these pathways and those structures are still at least partially intact enough that they can receive that conduction, because you have to heal that part of it. And I think that's why you're not, obviously you said that, very clearly, is the reason you're not doing it is because you've had some spinal cord atrophy and some other things. But if you didn't, the theory would be that as you stimulate these parts of the brain, those connections are rewired again. You're reigniting it, because I always tell my patients that have like things like reflex sympathetic dystrophy or chronic regional pain syndrome, or they have an amputation or something. I just say that we're just like, our brain is just these wires in a box, right? They're wires and if the wiring is rewired, like if you go to your house and you go to the electrical panel and you just start moving things around, guess what? Nothing's going to turn on. So even if the electrical panel's working fine and all the sockets work, everything, guess what? All the lights are going to be off. So you're trying to rewire those the things, and those impulses when they're doing it on you. I'm sure they're trying to get through and down through the spinal cord, but it's been so long, and you have the atrophy and stuff like that. So let me ask you, the same scientists that have performed this procedure on you and you're working with, have they had success with other people that have potentially less damage to their cord, or it's been a shorter period of time with having improvements in motor function, motor and sensory functioning? Because I know, like the, Neuralink talks about it, and they have made some progress. Has your specific procedure that you had helped others that may not have as much damage as you had?
Not yet, because the FDA regulates fairly strongly who can who can receive these at this point. And they haven't granted approval to try to, at least to our group. And I don't think Neuralink either. I think there is one group in New York that's trying to, that stimulates the spinal cord.
Directly. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, that's not part of this trial yet. There's so much work to be
So
done.
much work.
I think, like, as you
So
mentioned, the spinal cord is just so amazingly complex, as is the brain. And so I guess it's kind of a baby step strategy to figure out where the brain's mapping, these outputs, and then they'll start trying to get those outputs amplified into the spinal cord.
yeah, I think that what's exciting. I mean, I think that what's exciting, and I talk about this a lot. I think that between these nanotechnologies that are developing, one of the guy, I'm actually part of something called Society for Brain Mapping. I'm actually the one of the co-chairs of the spine division. But anyway, there's a guy, Babak Khattab. He has a book, and it's basically it's the textbook of like nano neuroscience, and there's all these nanomaterials and other things. I've talked about this before on a radio show, where you're not, like, if somebody has a spinal cord injury, not only do we have to bring certain cells in to get certain healing properties and potentially just certain other molecules, but you have to rebuild the scaffold, because otherwise, as those neurons regrow, and there's different types of neurons, again, beyond the, but there's like accessory neurons, and then there's but if we can build scaffolds along the thing, then they can grow along these scaffolds, whether they're fully biologic scaffolds, or if they're scaffolds made out of certain metals and things like that. These nano materials, some of them like have gold in them. They have just different things. The technology is progressing at such a fast rate.
Yeah.
I see a time not too distant in the future. I'm talking, 5-10 years, where as a spine surgeon, somebody comes in with a spinal cord injury. We say, okay, here's where the injured things are, right? AI diagnosis, precisely where it is, which tracks are affected. And then you can go in there and actually operate on that part and put some scaffolding in there, stem cells, and then let those, because otherwise, what happens in these injuries is the body is trying to heal, but when it's disordered, it's just mumbo jumbo. Like it doesn't matter. It's like our brain, like, right? If somebody has a gunshot wound to the brain and it heals with scar, and a bunch of neurons are trying to heal and it's all over the place, those are that's not going to do much.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like kind of the next frontier, is helping the body to heal and giving it as much help as it needs to kind of reconstruct. And I know some good work is being done in animal models, which is really exciting. Same thing for nerve injuries, where people just have a complete amputation, and sometimes just putting the nerves back together doesn't quite do it. Or brachial plexus injuries, where people lose their entire function of their arm, and a lot of those don't regain that, and they need muscle transfers and this and that just to try to get a little bit of movement. It's fascinating. And there's 18, by the way, for those of you listening, this isn't like 18,000 new spinal cord injuries a year in the United States. That's a lot of people that are going through the same, not the same journey, but this, like no one's journey is the same, but you know what I mean? They're going through the same thing, pain of the person, all the families around them, everyone's got to deal with this. So I think, I'm very excited. I think we're getting closer than ever to being able to take that next step, and this brain stimulation, and then eventually spinal cord stimulation, building these scaffolds, doing these other things, and then the whole technology, like the whole growing understanding of how stem cells work and how they can play into this whole thing is good. It's just fascinating. Like I said at the beginning, the intersection of everything that's coming together in the next 5 to 10 years, the fastest changes in human history. And then, of course, our friend the AI is going to be, right? It's going to be eventually, once it becomes AGI, it's like 1 million humans squared then cubed, then times, then 4, then 5, and then like numbers that we can't even, as humans, we don't understand. This is like more like God territory kind of for the believers. For the non-believers, it's big. They're big. They're really big numbers. So, before, I just want to get into some of your other work that you've done, as a psychologist. But before we get there, this resilience piece, I'm always inspired by people like yourself and so many people that are like either victims of, I've had all kinds of people on my podcast. They're victims of something, or something's happened and they have to get over these things, and it just helps others to frame their own personal reality and situation and seeing it. And I can just tell you that resilience it's more necessary in our current world than it's ever been before. And I see in my patient population that resilience is a huge problem for people. People are like, they allow their thoughts, things that are going on, to completely destroy their lives. And when I see that, I'm just so, just so heartbroken. I mean, I just spoke to a dad yesterday who was just talking, and this has nothing to do with the other thing, but he just, was just suffering from some just chronic health issues and very overweight and lost the thing. But he was so emotional and he had no resilience and so down on himself and negative self-talk and whatever. We had to go the whole thing again. I'm not a psychiatrist, but as a physician, we kind of, I don't want to say I play one on TV, but we certainly are therapists. We're all like, just talking to you, I'm getting my therapy because I feel good. I mean, it's an inspiring story. What is, for those of people that are out there, whether they're spinal cord injuries or whatever, what are your, like, if you're in a really dark place and you feel like there's no hope, and you talked about finding meaning in this and that, like, what's your advice for people that just feel like there's no light and there never will be? Like, how do they find that? I know it's people say cliche stuff, whatever. But I mean, like deeply from somebody who's been through it.
Yeah, this may sound counterintuitive, but gratitude.
Yes, it's not.
Go to gratitude. I mean, we all have so much. I mean, even on my darkest days, I still have so much. To be able to think. To be able to, experience relationship. I mean, relationships are just, they're so essential to resilience, I think.
Absolutely.
Just touch, compassion, getting beyond, just our issues, and even when they're very real issues, we still have something to give. And that's where I go. It's just gratitude. I mean, look out the window, look at nature, look at a loved one, be with a loved one, pet your dog. I
love my dogs.
Yeah, I love my dog.
They're amazing, right? They know nothing but love. Nothing unlike some of our especially in this day and age right now, where people aren't exactly. It's not a lot of kumbaya going on in this in this current, because it's not like. There's this guy, one of my favorite, I'm really into these motivational, I'm really into it because, people always ask me my own result. Now I have the privilege of speaking to people like yourself and all these different people. And that's now my motivation, because it's amazing. It's like just talking to people and the human experience. But I love these motivational guys. And I love what, like, this guy, Gary Vee. He's a great entrepreneur, but I also love him because he's eventually going to buy the New York Jets, which is unfortunately.
I'm so sorry.
Now you feel sorry for me. Now you understand that I've also had my own traumas, and that's one of them.
Repeated traumas.
Horrible. Another 0-3 start. It's so. Anyway, let's not talk. Let's change the subject. But anyway, so Gary,
you don't want to talk about the Eagles?
No, no, no.
I,
You know what? I like the Eagles. I like Jalen Hurts and those guys. I'm not a hater of anybody, whatever. But I was going to say Gary Vee. He just says it. He's like, no matter what's, because people, they have trouble with and he just says, the chances, and I don't know how he figures out this number. The chances of being born human are something like 4 trillion to 1.
yeah,
Right? Because of all these nations. He's like, it's 4 trillion to 1 that you were born a human. And he's like, and you're upset because you have to wait longer in line at like at Starbucks or your job or what else. And obviously, we're with you, and people, most of the people I talk to, it's a lot more serious. But the truth is, it is such an unbelievable, it's so amazing that we were born into this and established consciousness in this world, that we just opened our eyes and we have no idea what the heck this is all about. But it is a privilege, because it's beautiful, and nobody wants to, like some people just don't want to acknowledge it, just because they're in that dark place. But if they let themselves acknowledge it, like you said, look, like right now I'm looking out the window. It's a beautiful day here. It's sunny. The trees are, green, and it just sounds like, but it's amazing. Like, this is amazing. And just being able to use our minds on a daily basis and think and have those relationships and have those connections between, because obviously connection is everything.
yeah.
Without connections, we're not, humans are not for,
No,
for those that want to just, think about, the guy out stranded on the island talking to his, Paul Wilson, they understand that without connection, we go crazy. Even if we make up a connection where we're literally talking to a ball that we paint a face on, and then that's our friend.
Yeah.
And so it's so that being said, thank you. I think that's, and I think gratitude is amazing. I think the practice of gratitude, people waking up every morning and just thinking about like the 3 things they're grateful for today, and how they want to show their gratitude, is just a great way to start your day. And when I'm in a, not the best mood, and I think about the things I'm grateful, it immediately changes my, immediately. So I think that's great, but I think that people now have gotten a flavor kind of for who you are, and what a great connection you have basically to the human species, and the truth. And this is a saying that I say all the time, and it's funny because this Gary Vee said, I wasn't even trying to line up because whatever, but he always talks about how much he like believes in people and just loves people, and that's my whole like mantra. People ask me, well, why are you doing this stuff, and why are you doing integrative health? I love people, and I just see suffering, and it's understanding this connection. I'm not like some brilliant guy or anything like, but as much as I can help, use my skill set as much as I can, and that's not just my skill set as a physician; it's my skill set as a human that wants to help other humans, as you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that in of itself is enough of a skill, even for people that are not like you, that are in the medical field and understand like all the psychology behind it. If they're just caring and have a warm heart and want to help other people, even just go and talk to those people. If they go to nursing homes and just sit down with those elderly people that have no one to talk to, you've literally just changed somebody's day, maybe even their like a week, a month.
Absolutely.
It's just by stimulating oxytocin and dopamine and all these, these other great things. All right. So that being said, we get why you are so human.
Before we move on, I want to reiterate what we were talking about before we started, with docs that bring their humanity into the relationship, and how profound, at least in my speaking personally, how that has been a profound motivator in my life. And I don't think you may not comprehend just how much you give by being a physician in the true sense of the word, where you are healing with your knowledge, but you're as importantly healing with your humanity and your touch and your compassion. And that gets so lost in medicine these days. And yeah, I mean, just hats off to you
Right?
for working, in integrated medicine and doing those things that really impact,
No,
so many
I,
people. So,
I mean, I thank you. I mean, I appreciate it deeply. I mean, I mean, like from my perspective, I mean, I don't feel I'm just being myself,
right.
and
Right.
I talk to other physicians, and this is like really important because if somebody is coming in and they're hurting, and obviously their life is upside down, they're not seeing you because they like want to just hang out, right? They're seeing you
Right.
because they're hurting. Something is wrong. Something is eating it, whether it's pain or dysfunction or just heartache, whatever it is. The power of when we see patients as physicians, or when you were injured and people were seeing you and caring for you and and your doctors now that are doing all the stuff. The difference between having interactions with patients where they genuinely can feel that your soul, your being is connecting with their being. I mean, really connecting. You're not thinking about, like the dinner you're going to, some
Right.
business dinner where you're
Right.
trying to do something for your practice. It's just you and them. And like, how can I help you? Like, how can I make your life better today? If they feel that in and of itself is such a healing power. It's so deeply healing, and I agree, and I see it, and I see that that's being lost, and it's heartbreaking. And again, I'm not doing, to be honest, to me, anything I do it should be just normal. It's not. I don't feel like it's anywhere. I
But
just feel like
it's not.
it's not. No, I
So
get that it's not, but it's
that's
just
why I
normal.
wanted to bring
Oh, thank you.
attention and
No,
yeah.
it's just one of those things where like I feel like it's just harmful, and so many tears are shed, like people, and I don't even do it. I literally, all I do, I talk about this so much, and thanks for bringing it up, and I really appreciate you, like, understanding like the power that physicians can have on people's lives. But sometimes I just get into conversations with and just like how, like what's going on, like what, and then just get deep into like what they're like.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling like I'm not doing anything. I'm just like having a conversation like I'm having with you. And then people start crying and doing all this stuff. And they're like, oh my God, you're the first doctor that's listened to me. I was like, well, what were the other people even doing? Like I don't even, like, what was the purpose of that? That visit, they just kind of know what they're going to. And again, if you need like if you're seeing a doctor for a very, very specific thing, I get it. But if you're just having like, hey, they're coming in saying, I don't feel good because of this and that, taking a deep breath, having a conversation together, it's so healing. You're also creating a hope, for the patient, even if it's kind of a tough, even and say, well, you may not be able to walk again, but boy, you can give so much to the world. Just saying something like that to the thing can change everything. I mean, it can go from night to day.
Yep.
And like I said, I could talk about, but this show is about you and what we're doing. But yeah, it is something. And I always ask, and I've asked, this question quite a bit, and people always remember when they have like really this, especially really traumatic experiences where they're fine one day and then they hit a rock or they in a car accident or whatever. They always remember that one or two like deeply empathetic person that changed their entire mindset. And a lot of times, honestly, it's nurses.
Yeah.
They might have five nurses that have no interest in whatever. You just have that one nurse that maybe even cries with you, or it's so emotionally over that it's a complete game changer, and people need to know that. And anytime I see something like that, I thank them. I'm like, thanks for doing on my page. They're really anxious, and you changed their demeanor, and thank you. And if we had more of that, and we passed that on for humanity, and we treated each other that way, do you know what it would look? It would be insane.
Yeah.
What things would look like, and the amount of healing we would have, and whatever. Because people are hurting. It's just, it's crazy what's going on out here, and it really is heartbreaking. And I just,
I know this isn't the topic, but how does that change? Because I've actually thought about the patient physician relationship quite a bit, and I guess we'll talk about eHarmony.
Yes, we got it.
But I along those lines, was thinking about, could we match physicians with patients more effectively? Because, I do think there are patients that want just the facts, but then there are other ones that need a touch, that need, just a couple of minutes.
Yes.
And then there are others that, yeah, there are other patients that are black holes, and I understand that as well. There's no physician in the world that's going to fulfill that. But I mean, could we do something in terms of matching, or what's the medical system missing?
I listen. I actually love that. I actually give that. It's interesting because I see a ton of second opinions, second opinions are just common in the spine surgery. People get recommended a surgery, or they think they need surgery. They're told they don't want to, and then they want to see somebody else, whatever. But it's very interesting because my kind of comeback to patients when they come in and they want to complain about a different physician interaction that they might have had that was not positive, or they felt like it was brief, or they felt like usually it's not the brevity, it's the quality of that interaction. Somebody there, they didn't even care. They just walked in and said nothing I can do, and they just kind of walked. So I always say, like, my spiel, and I love your idea. It sounds like you're just on the verge of building a new company here after. But I just say that, listen, I say we're all very different. We're different human beings, and it's true. It does go down the eHarmony path. I didn't think of it that way, but I said we are different human beings. And I was like, and I always say, and I always like throw myself under the bus. I say, yeah, you might like me now, and we've had this great conversation, and yes, I'm happy to take care of you. I was like, but there's other patients that might not like my style. They might want to go to somebody else that is just like boom, boom, boom. They draw out a bunch of stuff on a piece of paper, and they say, here's what your screws in, and blah, 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 and they're out of it, and they like it because they're just more mechanistic. Kind of, a mentality. And I try to, and it's true, like I've been around people in so many different capacities. So, I judge if somebody clearly is all business, like if I somebody comes in and they're like some like big shot, like judge, and they're just coming in and it's their fifth opinion. They just want that. They want to know, how many surgeries have you done? Are you good at this? What are your references? And tell me exactly what you're going to do. They want to know every little I'm not going to go down a touchy-feely route with them because they think that I'm a goofball. And then there's other people that literally you almost don't need to talk to them at all about their pathology because they don't care. They just want to know that you care. And like, doc, if you care, I'm in good hands, and this is the right place for me, and I feel like I can heal here, and the journey begins that way. So I think that's a great idea. It's above my mental, this is, we'll leave it to, guys like you that have developed these, these algorithms, before us, but I think it's absolutely, possible. I would say there would be a lot of pushback, not from the patient's side, right? I think from the physician side, but that would be cool to get a bunch of docs in and do personality profiles on them, their style, and then to do it on the patient side. But I think the patients would love it on their side. But I don't have to go and waste my time with a doc that I really am going to have a horrible visit with. Of course, it's good. It's a great. I think it's good. I think that's good. Conversation needs to be continued. That is something that I would have a lot of interest in. So let's obviously we could talk about empathy and all this stuff for hours, but for kind of sake of time. So connections between people, right? Just like we're having a connection now, it's which is awesome. Like I said, I love doing this because you can connect, and people don't understand. You can connect with people. I was at a dinner last night and talking about the doctor-patient relationship. Like, people don't understand. Like in 20 minutes, you can get an amazing connection with people. It just depends on how strong that bond becomes, how much your brain heart coherence, because right, brainwaves start. If you look at QEEGs, if you're in sync with somebody, your brainwaves start to sync. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And it's our energy fields and signatures and this and that. So you could do it. But anyway, connections like between people, can be strong. And that obviously goes when it comes to relationships, because if you connect the wrong people for the wrong reasons, things, tend to break. So the question is, so eHarmony, everybody knows eHarmony. How did you get into did they just come to you and said, hey, you've got all this great research. We'd love to use you as a consultant to develop these protocols.
Yeah. Well, it was much earlier in my career. And the founder of eHarmony was actually dean of the graduate school that I went to. I was a researcher afterwards and after graduating, and he knew that, and he was a couples therapist, for decades. And he came to me with the observation that there was a significant proportion of the couples that he saw who he felt he could do absolutely nothing for, because they were fundamentally mismatched from day one, that their personalities, their values, their interests were misaligned to the extent that there was nothing to do. So his question was, how do we get ahead of the curve on that? And how do we help couples potentially identify these mismatches before they get married? So that was the goal. And we ended up spending like 3 years doing research on that, where we developed our questionnaire, personality, values, interests primarily. We took that out and gave it to over 2,000 married couples, because, the idea of matching couples and waiting, 10 years.
That's a long.
We wanted a business, So it made sense to look at existing couples, and they took both partners took the assessment. They also took marital satisfaction index, and that's what we used as our outcome variable to optimize for in developing our model. So, and we found that generally, you want a fair amount of homogamy. You want some baseline similarities between husband and wife, or else, everything's a negotiation, basically. If one's an extrovert, one's an introvert, one's highly detail oriented, the other is just, open and creative. You don't want to marry your clone, but you don't want to marry someone with whom you have no core to develop common interests around. And so that's basic, what the algorithm told us, that the happy marriages looked like. So we applied that thinking and that algorithm to couples up front. And I think the biggest thing we did was just keep those real profound mismatches from getting together. Because interestingly, there was a follow-up study done on the length of marriages, eHarmony, and which the 7-year rate was about 4% divorce rate. The rate for match was around 8%. And the rate for the wild, as we like to say, was about 11%. So, it seemed that maybe it was just because people were being more thoughtful about their selecting a mate that was the factor. But whatever it was, it worked. And Yeah, I still meet people who like, yeah, I met on eHarmony.
Yeah.
I still get a physiological reaction. It's like,
It's
yeah,
No, it's good. It's good. Yeah. So basically, you're saying if one person is water and the other person is dirt, together they're going to make mud. So let's keep the water away from it. It's like an old Rodney Dangerfield joke, but I just use other people's stuff. I think no, that was my next question. I was going to ask you about. I mean, so if you're bringing it at the 7 year mark, from 11% in the wild. I've been married for 20 years, and it was in the wild.
Yeah.
So, we're fairly compatible, which is good. Not perfectly. We're nowhere near clone, but definitely, fill each other's kind of, deficits in, which is good. So very difficult, by the way, to be married to a surgeon. I don't recommend it for women out there that are, their next doctor. It's really hard, especially at the beginning where we're not as sure of ourselves, and it's extremely stressful. As you get further into your career, it definitely gets much easier because you trust yourself a lot more.
You guys are a breed unto your own.
It's a whole different, and I consider myself on the more normal side.
Yeah.
We see, here, I'm not trying to say anything, but listen, my colleagues know, especially the surgeons, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. We're more cool than the neurosurgeon. Most of my partners are neurosurgeons, so I always dig on them. Neurosurgeons, you talk about a different crowd. Most of my partners.
Orthopedic guys are machine heads too. You like your tools, man.
No, we're just a little different. It's just different. I mean, you're drawn to. I actually wanted to be a neurosurgeon at some point, like when I was in med, but I quickly found my crowd. I was like, I like these ortho guys. I'm going to do that, and then I went into like kind of the in between, the spine, where it's a neurosurgical and ortho, and we all work with each other, and it's a nice. Setting, but I give it to them. I mean, like orthopedic surgery residency is brutal, but neurosurgical residency is because I know a lot of my friends obviously were, residents while I was an ortho resident. They were neurosurgery residents, and holy smoke. I mean, and it was bad. It was bad. I mean, I had a lot of 100-hour weeks. Those guys sometimes didn't sleep for a week. I mean, like, and you talk about resilience and things like that. And I've talked about that on the podcast. It's hard. It is hard, and like some of it is like almost considered hazing at time. With the whole. It's much better now. There's rules now. I went when there was a little bit of a wild west. They were just changing the Bell Commission had just come out, and and all those other things. But anyway, bringing it down from 11% to 4%. That's actually very impressive. I did not know that. I mean, that is pretty impressive. So are they planning to do the 10-year and the 20-year study and all that stuff? I need this.
Yeah, no, I'm not involved with the company. It's been sold and in completely different management. So,
is it totally different? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So. Yeah, I hope, it seems that they're still using at least a lot of the same instrument to evaluate. And
was just out of curiosity, and if in that 4% divorce, did they then take those people and try to then figure out what went wrong in those four and then maybe tweak? Because that's what AI would do, right? AI would say, okay, now we have 4%, and maybe there's this trait. Maybe people that like that their favorite color is red and the other person's favorite color is green, that led to the other 4%. Let's make sure we do the favorite color test before, we do all this other stuff.
That's a great idea. But I mean, doing those population-based studies, are quite expensive enough. You try to dig into them, it gets prohibitive. But
people don't even, and that's why sometimes people, like with certain things, like especially things that have almost no risk to patients, they're like, oh, how come there's not a study of like 5,000 people? I'm like, do you understand that? I'm like, especially when things don't have industry backing them, I'm like, who on this planet is actually going to pay for studies on like whether, like hydrogen water helped 5,000 people here in Italy, and unless it's they don't have that kind of money, so it ain't never going to happen. That's why there's just some stuff you just have to go by. Well, it seems to be working. Well, let's do that. It's not killing anybody, so it's fine.
Yeah, right.
So is in like as other stuff, are there any other things as like that you've done that has been, because obviously the eHarmony thing really sticks. It's just that it was just so interesting. Is there any other thing like over your career in doing like these psychometric analyses and things like that has just stood out to you as something that might be like the next frontier in like human connection and where we're going and where AI might help us to augment like personal thoughts that you might have had, theories that you want to explore, where it's like there's not, you need 1,000 scientists to do it, but now we have AI and maybe we can do those things now.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I work now for a private equity company, and Antonio Gracias is just a brilliant guy. And he gives me the leash to kind of explore new areas. And I mean, it's a real rabbit hole, but it's basically a new way of thinking about how the brain works. It's called active inference. And basically, the premise is that our brain is predicting everything to allow us to allocate resources, within our body to be able to, go into novel environments. And, it uses all previous experiences to predict what this environment's going to take. So, I mean, that subtle shift of, thinking about the brain as kind of this big stimulus response mechanism to turning it around to think about it as potentially predicting what's coming has amazing implications. And I've been focusing kind of the theoretical work around what the implications are for resilience and how we can develop resilience more effectively by considering the brain this way. I've been fortunate enough to work with Dr. Carl Friston from London, who is like the most cited neuroscientist ever, because he came up with this theory. And I've been able to work with him directly. We've written a recent paper in Frontiers of Behavioral Neuroscience that describes this theory, but I think the implications of it are going to start getting into mainstream neuroscience, even mainstream practice. But I'm just so excited to be able to work on this, and it pushes my mind, which you got to do. And it also, I think we're going to come up with some real practical applications for this theory, particularly, hopefully, around resilience and how we can all develop that more effectively.
No, I think it makes perfect sense. In fact, there's a book, I don't remember the author. I believe it's called Prediction Machines.
Yeah.
It's about the way that AI comes up with its thing, because it's just a probability. It just looks at like probabilities of things. Again, I'm not an AI researcher. I think AI is fascinating, and I've been studying it for quite a while. But it really is prediction machines, and it just reminds me. And just forgive me with my movies. I'm always doing like movie stuff because I just love movies. Who doesn't love movies? But Terminator. Right? When the Terminator walks around, right, it sees all the things, and it sees probability. It's like, if I do this, there's a 92% chance that guy's going to die, and this thing, and that thing's going to, and I agree. That's the way we work. And what are we trying to do right now in AI? We're trying to study our human brain.
Yep.
We're trying to take our algorithms, which have taken billions of years of like whatever. Obviously the Homo sapiens, whatever, 300,000, but then billions if you go back to before we were what we are. it's taken a long time to create them, but we're trying to figure out what are those algorithms and then make the compute, like the machines, think like that, so to speak. And I see them trying to decode the brain, but I think it's going to go the other way. I think we're going to make the machines really and then they're going to decode the brain.
Yeah.
And then they're going to decide that they're a lot smarter than our brain anyway. They're like, we've already passed that point. We don't care how your brain works. We have light years past your thing. Have you read that book? I know that, but I feel like I read that book. I'm almost positive it's called Prediction Machine. It makes perfect sense. And so when you kind of, as we kind of wrap up here, this has been fantastic. So if you're doing that, as far as looking at the thing, are you working on projects on trying to develop AI and going a different way? Is this group that you're working with, are they also working on AI algorithms as well?
Dr. Friston is.
Okay.
He has a company, Versus AI, that is specifically developing a new model for AI, which I think, I mean, frankly, if we're ever going to get to AGI, I don't think the architecture of LLMs are going to get us there. I mean, it's a great, it understands knowledge, so effectively and can put together ideas, but that's a far cry from generating ideas and, solving, new problems and, getting us to Mars and all that kind of good stuff.
All the funds.
Yeah.
Versus I know that company. I think they're actually traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange. I don't know if they're traded yet on the.
They just got.
Oh, they did. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just interesting because I have one of my close friends, Dr. Dan Sipple. He's a physical medicine rehabilitation specialist. I think he's friends with that doctor. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they're friends. So or one of the researchers in there or something. But he knows that. That's where I know of that company. I don't know that's kind of extent. It'll also be interesting to see with things like mapping the brain. Mm-hmm. And thinking about, like, are we prediction machines? Where does it come from? What is consciousness? What is going on? I think eventually we'll get to the root of the questions. Is there an intelligence behind everything that happening? And again, I try to be like on this thing, like without my own personal beliefs, but being fairly, some people are deep believers. Some people believe in, like the source. Some people believe in there's all these different theories, but it's interesting that so many, and now I'm getting more philosophical. It's interesting that so many brilliant scientists, after a lifetime of research, and they do all this stuff, some of them that have never even believed come up with the thing. They're like, I can't really figure it out. There's an intelligent being that pretty much holds everything together, because otherwise it's not right. Einstein was like that. He's like, that's not possible without. He's like, I've looked at every permutation. I don't know how I don't know what hold. No one can answer, like, why does everything hold together?
Yeah.
But we don't know, like, what is this energy? And I know Tesla talked about it and all these brilliant people. Right now I'm sure I'm losing the audience. Okay, here we go. Here's the crazy Sinicropi we all know. He's going off on energy tangents and scaling and Tesla. I love this stuff because you know what, like Musk always says, one of the purposes of life is just asking the right questions. And honestly, that keeps us going. When we stop asking questions, what's the point? Like, we're put on this earth. We do not know what this is, even though some people claim they know exactly what it is. That good for them. I'm glad that they figured it all out. But for the rest of us that have no idea, what's going on, asking the right questions is certainly, that was what wakes me up in the morning. Like, I just have all these questions. I mean, am I going to answer 2% of them in my lifetime? Maybe, but I'm going to keep asking the questions because it's exciting, but it'll be interesting to see how quantum computing and increasing the speed of computation by factors, again, that are hard for the human mind to explain, how that will then play into AI, to mapping out, all these things, to really figuring out the origin of the universe. And it's actually kind of fun to just put into like ChatGPT or those other stuff, like, how did this all start? This Big Bang. Well, what was before Big Bang? And what was before that? And what was before that? And like, who knows? We can't we can't comprehend. Maybe quantum will figure it out at some point. Who knows? But anyway, we go on to. So this has been a fantastic, time.
Yeah.
And together, I look forward to collaborating and speaking more. And now you got me thinking that in the back of my mind now, I'm like, hey, do we need a Match.com for doctor patients?
Yeah.
And how quickly do we need to move on this before some bigwig hears this podcast? Like, oh my God, that's the next great idea. They formulate a $100 billion company within a couple of years. That we just had. Well, you did. It's not my idea, but we just had a discussion.
Keep thinking about it.
We're thinking. I'm going to think about it. I will definitely think about it. So. If people want to learn more, about you and the work that you're doing, whatever, is there like a special website they should go to or social media handles? Like, how do you like to be found? And if people have questions, like, where do you want them to go?
LinkedIn is always good to contact me personally there. And my company is Spinal, PSYML.co. You can look up there and contact me through there as well. See what I'm working on. The like.
Well, that's all. That's fantastic. Like I said, we'll pick. I'm sure that there's things that we missed today. We can pick it up on a part two.
Look forward to that.
And so let some of the people digest some of the stuff we talked about today. And like I said, it's been a pleasure. Having Dr. Buckwalter on the show today. This is fascinating. I mean, I learned a ton. Like I said, I had my therapy session, which is great. I feel good. My oxytocin.
I do as well.
I'm ready. I'm ready for the rest of the day. Now, so thanks everybody for watching us today or listening to us on your whatever favorite channel you like to hear this podcast on. I'm Dr. Sinicropi. This has been Wellness at the Speed of Light podcast, and it's been a great one. Hopefully you got through it through the end when I start before I started ranting about quantum and all my other favorite topics. We will see you on the next one. Go take care of your families, be healthy, and be well.